Well, it's not going to come as news to many of you when I say that the sport of football, or soccer as we call it here in Australia, contains so many different forms of running skills, from stamina to agility to power, speed, not to mention things like reaction time. So how do we structure all of this? The truth is, it's an art in itself, and that's what we focus on specifically in our pre-season running membership for footballers. But today, what I wanted to do is walk you through an example of one style of session which combines a number of factors which is crucial to the improvement of your game. Now today, the whole role is a focus on coordination, agility, reaction time, and top end speed. And we do this through a variety of exercises. The whole session goes for around 40 to 60 minutes, depending on how much time you take in between. The goal here, as I said, is to implement a session like this, similar to this, or if you like, this session at least once a week into your training routine. Now, this isn't going to help you outrun your opposition for the duration of a game. This is a specific focus on power and speed, which is crucial, but if you're not doing the other work, you're not going to get the maximum benefits of something like this. For today, let me walk you through step by step how we structure one of our speed, agility, and coordination sessions. Now, before you get into an activity like this, it's important to go out and just welcome the legs into some kind of movement. Now, despite the fact that we're going to be doing so many different directional based movements at top end speed throughout this session, one of the best ways to warm up before any of that is through just going through the motions of a very slow, light jog at a pace which is embarrassingly slow. You just want to get the heart pumping a little, you want to get the blood flowing a little, and then once you've done that, around 5 to 10 minutes, if you've got time, you want to extend that slightly, no worries, but our goal here is not to exhaust ourselves, but just to get our body welcomed. Now, from there, after we've done our warm-up, we're going to do some stretches. If you've got some activation or warm-up drills that you like to go through or that have become habits in your own training program, feel free to introduce those. However, we're going to start with 3 warm-up activities just to take our body to the next step in what it is that we're actually going to be putting it through. Again, we're not at the key part of the session just yet, but after this, we're going to move into the main block. All right, the first activity is what is known as an Icky shuffle. Now, the idea here is not only focusing on footwork, on reaction time, on coordinating the movements, but on stepping up the intensity of the activity. If you've never done the Icky shuffle before, let me walk you through it as I give you a demonstration of what it is. Starting at one end of your ladder, you're going to make a 3-step transition through the first portion of your ladder, moving your right step into the first portion, then your left foot into the first portion. You'll finalize the movement by having your right foot on the outside of the ladder. Then moving up to the next portion of your ladder with the opposite foot, you'll make that same movement throughout the distance of your entire ladder. Now, if you don't have the ladder, don't stress. The idea is the movement, not that you have the ladder in place. Now, with all of these warm-up exercises, we're going to do 5 repetitions each, with about a 30-second recovery between each rep. Once we've done the Icky shuffle, we're going to move into another form of shuffle, which is the lateral shuffle. Now, the idea here is exactly what it sounds like, to move laterally. Obviously, in a sport like ours, it is so important that we're not just getting so used to running in a forward motion, but we're taking into consideration all of the different angles that we have to run. So once again, let me walk you through this one. We're going to do 5 repetitions before we move into the final activity of our first warm-up block. With your body weight low and your chest over your knees, you want to focus on maintaining stability through your hips with each step that you take. You'll start by going 10 meters in one direction, and when you get there, repeat the movement in the opposite direction. And to finish off our little warm-up section here, we're going to move into what is called karaoke. This is how we do karaoke. Starting with your feet together, your right foot will come across the front of your body. As your left foot comes out to balance you out, the right foot will then go behind your body on its next step. Throughout this exercise, focus on the rotation throughout the hips as well as the coordination of the movement. Now, the truth is there's so many different varieties of warm-up activities, and these are 3 of about 50. Now, depending on your fitness level, your time commitments, your competition level, you can extend this warm-up activity up to about 5 or 6 different exercises. If you take a little longer to warm up, if you feel as though it's more beneficial for you to extend that, you can do it. Within the membership, we give you some more guidance, but for now, we just want to give you a little taste test of what a first section of a warm-up might look like for someone playing our game. Now, from here, our body should be well and truly warmed up. Our heart should be pumping. Our body should be ready for what is about to come. We're about to get into the main set, where once again, with each of the 3 different drills that we do, we're going to be operating at a top-end speed and completing 5 repetitions of each activity, which really nicely mirror the required movements for a sport like football. Activity number 1 is called the Pro Shuttle, and here is how we do it. For the Pro Shuttle, you're going to have 3 cones separated at about a 5-meter distance. Starting at the second cone, or the middle cone, you'll do a lateral shuffle across to the first cone, touching it with one of your hands, before getting back up, sprinting to the far cone, touching it with the opposite hand, and then sprinting once more back to the furthest cone from the point that you are currently. From the Pro Shuttle, we're going to move into an exercise called the half circle. Now here, with the half circle, the idea is to develop our ability to move in multiple different directions, forward and backwards at top end speed, coming back to a central point before we go again. Here is how you complete the half circle activity. With 5 cones set out in a semicircle formation, with the distance between your start line and the cones being around 1.5 to 2 meters distance, start moving to your left around the first cone, come back to the start point before doing that with each of the cones until you've completed the full semicircle. When you get back to the start, repeat it in the opposite direction. Now, the last activity of the main set is one called crosshairs. Again, we're going to do 5 repetitions before I give you the option at one final activity for today's session. But for now, let me show you how to do these crosshairs. With 2 meters between each cone, you'll have a start point on the outside cone. You'll come into the middle cone before going to the right, then returning to the middle before going to the cone ahead, return to the middle before going to the cone to the left, come back to the middle to return to your start point. Now, as I've said a couple of times throughout this activity, obviously it's important that we're not just doing the straight running, we're not just doing the flat out sprinting, but we're making sure we're coordinating the movements, the lateral movements, the forward and back movements, and incorporating these at a top end speed. You want your reaction time and your ability to make these adjustments on game day to be very strong, which is why it is that we're practicing. But in saying that, at certain points throughout our game, we're going to be required to run flat out in a particular direction, which is why I encourage the athletes that I work with to inject some form of top-end speed into the end of their session. Now, if you want to do these on hills or flats, you can mix and match for each and every session. 1 week flat, the next week hills. The idea here is to tap into that top end speed which is required, and I enjoy doing this with slightly fatigued legs as it more closely replicates what it is that we're going to be feeling like on game day. You might feel for the first part of the first half that you're sprinting on fresh legs, but that's pretty much the only time in the match that you're actually going to feel this way. So it's important to develop confidence and the ability to sprint when you're tired, which is why at the end of a session like this, we can inject 4 to 5 top-end sprints between 40 and 80 meters with a nice slow walk-back recovery. Now, once you've done all this, you should be breathing, your legs should be heavy, you're completely normal, you're in good company there. Again, you want to finish this session like you started it, just by turning the legs over with a nice, slow 10-minute jog, maybe jump on a foam roller, maybe finish with some stretches. Now, as I've mentioned, there are so many different ways that we can structure sessions. Obviously, this is a speed and coordination session, but it's just as important to work on stamina, that speed, endurance, your ability to be able to recover after a top-end effort. That is another part of our pre-season running program. If there's any questions, comments, concerns, whack them down in the comments below. I'm happy to answer any of your questions. But for now, happy training. I hope this was helpful. If there is anything else you'd like me to speak about in the subject of running for football, I'd also be happy to answer your questions there. So just let me know.